Tom lived in a peaceful town surrounded by green hills and small lakes. He bought a piece of land at the edge of the town because he loved nature. His land was big, with a small stream flowing through it. Every morning he would sit near the stream with his cup of tea and listen to the sound of flowing water. It made him feel calm and happy. The town had a homeowners association known as the HOA. They made many rules for the neighborhood. Some rules were simple, like keeping your garden clean or painting your house in soft colors. But other rules were strange and strict. Tom never liked the HOA much, but he kept to himself and avoided any trouble. After some time, Tom noticed that every summer, the stream on his land would dry up. The ground would become dusty and the grass would turn brown. He had a small garden and a few fruit trees that needed water, so one day he got an idea. He thought of building a small dam to collect water when it rained. It would store water for his plants and create a nice pond for birds and fish. Tom studied how to build a safe dam. He read books, watched videos, and talked to a few local workers. He used safe materials and followed every safety rule he could find. It was not a big project, just a simple and harmless one. After a few weeks, the dam was ready. The stream water slowly filled up the pond, and soon there was a beautiful little lake in his backyard. It looked peaceful and clean. Birds came to drink water. Fish started living there. Even the neighbors began to notice how pretty it looked. Some would stop and take pictures. Kids would watch ducks swimming in the pond. Tom was proud of what he had made. It gave life to the area, and the air around his land felt fresher, but not everyone was happy. One day, Tom got a letter from the HOA. The letter said he had broken neighborhood rules by changing the natural flow of water. They said he had built a dam without permission. Tom was surprised. He didn't think he needed permission for something that was on his private land. The next week, HOA members came to his property. They looked around with serious faces. The leader of the group, a man named Mr. Allen, spoke in a strict tone. He said Tom's dam was a violation of community guidelines and could cause flooding in other areas. Tom tried to explain that his dam was small and safe. He even showed them his plans and how the water level was controlled. But they didn't listen. A few days later, Tom received another letter. This time it was worse. The HOA had fined him $250,000. The letter said he must remove the dam and restore the land or pay the fine. Tom could not believe what he was reading. He had never imagined that something made out of care for nature could turn into such a big problem. He went to meet the HOA members again to talk calmly, but they refused to change their decision. Mr. Allen told him that rules were rules and no one could break them. Tom felt angry but kept his calm. He told them that the dam was not harming anyone and was only helping the environment. But the HOA didn't care. They wanted him to pay or destroy the dam. Tom went home and sat near his pond that evening. The sun was setting and the reflection of the sky danced on the calm water. He thought about all the effort he had put into building this place. The pond had become home for many small creatures. He could not understand how something so good could be seen as wrong. He looked at the water and felt sad but also thoughtful. If they wanted him to remove the dam, maybe he would let it go. But in doing so, they might learn a lesson about the balance of nature. He didn't want revenge, but he knew that sometimes people only understand when they see the real result of their actions. Tom took a deep breath and made up his mind. If they wanted him to take the dam down, he would. But he knew something that the HOA didn't. Removing it might not be as simple as they thought. The water had changed the land, and nature had found its new balance. What would happen next, even Tom couldn't fully predict. That night, as he looked out over the quiet pond, he whispered to himself that sometimes people don't value peace until it is gone. The next morning, Tom woke up early. He stood by the window and looked at his pond. The water was calm and the sky was clear. Birds were singing, and the sunlight touched the surface of the water, making it shine like glass. Tom felt peaceful, but deep inside he was worried. The fine from the HOA was too big, and he knew he could never pay it. He made a cup of tea and sat outside on the wooden chair near the pond. As he watched the ducks swim, he thought about what he should do next. He had two choices. One was to fight the HOA and take the matter to court. The other was to remove the dam and let the water go. Both options made him unhappy. He did not want to destroy what he had built with so much care. A few hours later, his neighbor Lily came to visit. She was an elderly woman who lived nearby and often walked around in the mornings. She had always admired Tom's pond. She stopped near the fence and smiled at him. "Your pond looks lovely, Tom," she said kindly. "I don't understand why they're troubling you for something so beautiful." Tom smiled sadly. "Thank you, Lily," he said. "I tried to explain to them that it's safe and helpful for everyone, but they don't want to listen." Lily shook her head. "The HOA only cares about rules, not reasons," she said softly. "They once fined my grandson for painting his door the wrong color. I hope you can find a way out of this." Tom thanked her for her kind words. After she left, he looked at the dam once more. It was built strong but simple. It held back the water safely, allowing it to flow slowly into the stream beyond. He knew it wasn't dangerous. He had checked it many times. But now, because of the HOA's decision, all his work might go to waste. Later that week, Tom received another notice. This time it was a warning that if he did not remove the dam within 7 days, the HOA would take legal action. The letter said they would send contractors to his land to destroy the dam, and the cost would be added to his fine. Tom felt trapped. He had no choice now. He decided to remove the dam himself before they came. If he did it on his own, at least he could make sure it was done safely. He did not want to cause harm to anyone. The next morning he began preparing. He put on his work gloves and picked up his tools. As he worked, he remembered how much effort he had put into building it. He had spent weeks shaping the stones, placing the wooden panels, and testing the water flow. Now he was undoing it all. The sound of falling water filled the air as he carefully loosened the first few blocks. Slowly, the pond began to change. The water level dropped little by little. Fish swam quickly, feeling the change in their home. Birds flew away from the surface. Tom felt a sting in his heart as he watched his creation fade away. It was not just a pond. It had been a part of his peace. By afternoon, the water started flowing faster toward the lower areas of the neighborhood. Tom kept checking to make sure it was controlled. But he noticed something strange. The land below his property had been built with poor drainage. The HOA had ordered several houses to be built near the natural water path years ago. Tom had warned them that it could be risky, but they never listened. Now that the water was returning to its original flow, it started to gather near those houses. Tom tried to slow it down, but nature had its own plan. The small streams that once ran through the fields began to rise. He quickly adjusted the wooden boards to release the water gently, but the ground was already too wet to absorb it. He stood there, watching carefully. His heart was heavy, but he knew he had done nothing wrong. He had followed their order. He had let the water go just as they asked. Whatever happened next would be the natural result of their demand. That night, Tom sat on his porch feeling tired but calm. The pond was now half empty, and the sound of moving water echoed softly through the valley. He looked at the stars and whispered, "Sometimes people don't see the good until they lose it." The air was cool, and a soft wind blew across the dry grass. Tom closed his eyes and listened to the faint sound of the stream finding its way again. Somewhere deep inside, he felt that this was just the beginning. He didn't wish harm to anyone, but he knew that when nature is disturbed, it always finds a way to remind people of its balance. He leaned back on his chair, thinking about the next few days. The HOA thought they had won, but Tom wasn't so sure anymore. Something told him that their actions might soon bring them a lesson they never expected to learn. The next morning, Tom woke up to a cloudy sky. The air felt heavy, and the sound of distant thunder rolled across the hills. He looked outside and saw dark clouds gathering over the town. It looked like a big storm was coming. The timing could not have been worse. The pond water had already been released, and now heavy rain was on its way. Tom walked down to the edge of his property and checked the dam once more. It was now half open, and the stream was flowing faster than before. The soil was wet from the light rain that had started early in the morning. He made sure that the remaining structure was strong enough to handle the water safely. He didn't want any trouble, even though he had followed every instruction from the HOA. By noon, the rain grew stronger. The sound of water hitting the roof was loud, and the stream turned into a rushing flow. Tom stood under his umbrella, watching as the water carried leaves and small branches down toward the neighborhood below. The flow was natural and smooth, but he worried that the lower areas might not handle it well. In the nearby houses, the HOA members were also watching the rain. Mr. Allen, the HOA leader, looked out from his large window. He felt satisfied knowing the dam was being removed. He told his wife that they had done the right thing for the safety of the community. But he didn't realize that the same water they wanted gone was now heading toward their own streets. By evening, the rain had turned into a downpour. The stream overflowed and water started to spread across the fields. Tom took a flashlight and went outside to check the flow. His boots sank into the wet ground as he walked. The water was not dangerous yet, but it was moving quickly. He stood there thinking about how everything had changed because of one decision. He remembered when he first built the dam, how quiet and peaceful everything had been. The pond had held the rainwater safely, stopping it from rushing down the hill. Now without the pond, there was nothing to slow it. The water had only one path toward the lower houses. That night, the rain didn't stop. It poured for hours. Tom barely slept. He sat near the window, listening to the sound of the storm. Around midnight, he saw flashing lights outside. Some of the neighbors below were already awake, trying to protect their gardens from the rising water. He saw people placing sandbags and moving outdoor furniture to higher spots. The next morning, the rain finally began to slow, but the damage had already started. Small pools of water had gathered on the streets. The ground was soaked. Tom decided to walk down the road to see how the lower houses were doing. As he walked, he noticed how the small ditches along the road were full. The drains were overflowing. When he reached the bottom of the hill, he saw Mr. Allen and two other HOA members standing in the middle of the street. They were looking at the water that had collected in front of their homes. The street looked more like a shallow river now. Cars were half submerged and the lawns were flooded. Mr. Allen turned and saw Tom walking toward them. "You see what your dam has caused?" Mr. Allen shouted angrily. "The water is everywhere now." Tom stayed calm. "I did what you told me to do," he said quietly. "You asked me to remove the dam and I did. The rain is natural. The dam used to hold this water. Without it, the land has returned to the way it was before." The HOA members looked at him without speaking. Deep down, they knew he was right, but they didn't want to admit it. The rain had only exposed what Tom had already tried to explain. His dam had been helping, not harming. As Tom turned to walk back home, he saw that the clouds were clearing. The storm was ending, but the water would take time to go down. On his way back up the hill, he met Lily again. She was wearing a raincoat and holding an umbrella. "I told you," she said softly. "They don't listen until nature teaches them." Tom smiled faintly. "I didn't want this to happen," he said. "I only wanted to build something good." Lily nodded. "Sometimes good things are misunderstood, but truth always comes out." When Tom reached home, the sun had started to shine again through the clouds. He looked at his half-empty pond. The land around it was muddy, but it was safe. He knew that soon the HOA would have to face the reality that their rules had caused more harm than his actions ever did. As evening came, Tom sat quietly on his porch. The birds began to return and the sound of dripping water slowly faded. He took a deep breath and felt a mix of sadness and peace. Nature had spoken and now the town would have to listen. He didn't feel angry anymore. Instead, he felt calm, knowing that he had done nothing wrong. What happened next would not be his doing. It would simply be nature finding balance again. The next morning, Tom woke up to the sound of rushing water in the distance. He stepped outside and saw that the ground was still wet from the night before. The sky was clear again, but puddles of rainwater were shining everywhere. The air smelled fresh, mixed with the scent of wet soil. He walked toward the edge of his property and looked down the hill. From where he stood, he could see the neighborhood below, and it didn't look good. The streets were still filled with water. Cars stood halfway submerged and lawns looked more like small ponds. The people of the neighborhood were outside trying to clean up the mess. Some were sweeping mud from their driveways, while others were checking their basements for water. It was clear that the storm had caused a lot of trouble. Tom sighed quietly. He didn't feel proud about what had happened, but he knew that it wasn't his fault. The dam he built had always protected the lower areas from such floods. It had held the rainwater safely. But now, because the HOA forced him to remove it, the natural flow had returned, and nature had shown its strength. He walked down to see if anyone needed help. As he reached the bottom of the hill, he saw Mr. Allen again. He was standing in front of his house with a tired expression. His yard was covered in mud, and the fence had been damaged by the strong flow of water. When Mr. Allen noticed Tom walking toward him, he frowned, but this time his voice was softer. "Tom," he said slowly. This is worse than I thought, Tom nodded. I warned you, Mr. Allen. The pond was not the problem, it was part of the solution. The dam helped store the extra water safely. Mr. Allen didn't reply at once. He looked around at the street, at the neighbors trying to save their gardens, and then back at Tom. Maybe we were too strict, he admitted quietly. But we thought it was dangerous. We didn't want anyone's home to be at risk. I understand, Tom said kindly. But sometimes we need to trust nature's balance. It doesn't always follow our rules. Before Mr. Allen could respond, another HOA member, Mrs. Green, came rushing out of her house. She looked upset and worried. The water is still not draining, she said quickly. The pipes are blocked and the backyard is full of mud. We might have to call the town office. Mr. Allen nodded and told her to contact them. Then he turned to Tom again. I think we need your help. You understand how the water moves through this land better than anyone. Tom was surprised by his words, but he agreed. I can try to help, he said simply. I know where the natural channels run. Maybe we can guide the water back to its path. Together they walked around the flooded areas. Tom pointed to where the stream used to flow before houses were built over it. He explained how the pond used to collect the rainwater and slowly release it over time. The HOA members listened carefully, realizing that they had made a big mistake by forcing him to remove the dam. By afternoon, Tom helped them dig small trenches to guide the water toward the old stream bed. With shovels and buckets, a few neighbors joined in. It was hard work, but slowly the water began to move. The streets started to clear and the lawns began to dry up. Everyone could see that Tom knew what he was doing. When they finally took a break, Lily came by with bottles of water for everyone. She smiled at Tom. Looks like they finally understand your work, she said kindly. Tom smiled back. Sometimes it takes a little trouble to open eyes, he said. I didn't want this to happen, but maybe now they will care more about how nature works. Mr. Allen approached him again. He looked tired but sincere. Tom, I owe you an apology, he said honestly. We judged too quickly. I see now that your pond was helping us. If you ever want to rebuild it, I'll make sure you get the approval. Tom was silent for a moment. He looked toward the empty area where his pond used to be. The land looked dull and dry without the shining water that once brought life to it. Maybe someday, he said softly. Right now, let's just make sure everyone is safe. By evening, the water level had gone down. The roads were muddy but passable. The sun set over the hill, painting the sky with soft orange light. The neighborhood was quiet again, though the signs of the storm were everywhere. As Tom walked back to his house, he felt a mix of relief and sadness. He had helped the very people who had treated him unfairly, but he didn't mind. He believed in doing what was right. The pond might have been gone, but the lesson it left behind was deep. That night, as he sat on his porch with a cup of tea, Tom watched the stars twinkle above the dark hills. He thought about how quickly people forget that nature cannot be controlled. It can only be respected. And now, everyone in that neighborhood had learned that truth in their own way. The next few days were calm. The sky stayed clear, and the air felt cooler after the heavy rain. The neighborhood slowly began to recover. People cleaned their driveways, washed mud from their fences, and repaired small damages around their homes. Though everything was returning to normal, the memory of the flood stayed fresh in everyone's mind. Tom continued to help his neighbors. He used his tools to fix small drainage paths and made sure the water could flow smoothly down the hill. Many neighbors who once ignored him now greeted him warmly. Some even came to thank him for his help. Tom didn't expect their kindness, but it made him feel that maybe things were changing. One morning, as Tom was trimming the bushes near the old pond area, he saw Mr. Allen walking toward him with a file in his hand. He looked different, less strict and more thoughtful. "Good morning, Tom," he said politely. "Do you have a moment to talk?" Tom nodded and put down his tools. "Of course," he said. Mr. Allen opened the file and showed him some papers. "These are documents from the HOA," he explained. "We had a meeting last night. Everyone agreed that we made a mistake. We want to remove the fine and clear your record. You don't owe anything now." Tom was quiet for a moment. He looked at the papers and then back at Mr. Allen. "That's good to hear," he said calmly. "I never wanted trouble. I just wanted to take care of my land." Mr. Allen nodded. "We understand that now. We also talked about your pond. If you're willing, we'd like to help you rebuild it, this time with full permission. We'll even get the town engineer to make sure it's safe." Tom was surprised. He didn't expect such an offer. "That's very kind of you," he said, "but I think I'll wait. Let's make sure the land stays stable after the flood before doing anything new." "That's fair," Mr. Allen replied with a smile. "You have more sense than most of us." After he left, Tom stood there for a long time thinking. He felt peaceful, not because the fine was gone, but because people had finally understood his purpose. He wasn't angry with them anymore. He only hoped they would remember the lesson nature had taught them. Later that afternoon, Tom went to visit Lily. She was sitting on her porch with her cat, reading a book. When she saw him, she smiled. "I heard the good news," she said. "No more fine?" Tom nodded. "Yes, it's finally over. They want to help me rebuild the pond." "That's wonderful," Lily said. "You see, sometimes patience brings better results than anger. You stayed calm when they blamed you, and now they respect you." Tom smiled. "You're right. Maybe peace is the best answer after all." For the next few days, the neighborhood stayed busy with cleaning and small repairs. The HOA even arranged a community meeting to talk about better planning for rainwater in the future. This time they asked Tom to attend and share his ideas. At the meeting, Tom stood in front of everyone and spoke in his usual calm voice. "Nature gives us everything we need," he said. "But when we try to control it too much, we create problems. The pond I built was never meant to cause harm. It was meant to help. If we work with nature instead of against it, our town will stay safe." Everyone listened carefully. Even those who had once complained about his pond nodded in agreement. When he finished speaking, the room filled with applause. For the first time, Tom felt truly accepted by the community. After the meeting, Mr. Allen shook his hand firmly. "You've taught us something important, Tom," he said. "We'll make sure the next projects in this town are planned with care." That evening, Tom walked home under the golden sunset. He looked down the hill and saw how the streets were finally dry and clean. Children were playing again. Laughter filled the air, and the sound of the stream returned to its gentle rhythm. Everything seemed peaceful. When he reached his porch, he sat down with a cup of tea, as he always did. He looked toward the old pond area, where a few puddles still sparkled in the fading sunlight. Birds had returned, picking at the soft ground. It made him smile. He knew he could rebuild the pond someday, not out of pride, but out of love for the land. This time, everyone would understand its purpose. The lesson had been learned the hard way, but at least it had brought people together. As night settled in, Tom leaned back and watched the stars appear one by one. The sky was clear and the world felt calm again. For him, peace was not about winning or losing. It was about harmony, with people, with nature, and with life itself. He took a deep breath and whispered softly, "Sometimes, you just have to let the water flow where it belongs." The days turned into weeks, and life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. The sun was bright again. The trees had new green leaves, and the sound of birds filled the air. People were smiling more now. They greeted each other with warmth, and for the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt united. Tom's life also felt peaceful again. He spent his mornings caring for his garden and trimming the trees that bordered his land. The grass was fresh, and small flowers had begun to grow where the pond once was. Every evening, he sat on his porch with a cup of tea, listening to the gentle sound of the stream flowing freely down the hill. One day, Tom received a letter from the town office. It was an invitation to attend a community planning event. The letter said they wanted local residents to share ideas about protecting the environment and managing rainwater. Tom smiled as he read it. It felt good to know that people now valued the same things he had tried to protect. At the meeting, Tom was welcomed with applause. The town engineer thanked him for his knowledge and calm attitude during the recent flood. "Your understanding of the land helped us see what we were missing," she said kindly. "We'd like to build new water systems based on your ideas." Tom felt shy but happy. He stood up and shared his thoughts. "Nature always finds a balance," he said simply. "We only need to work with it, not against it. If we respect the flow of water, it will never harm us." The people nodded in agreement. They made notes, asked questions, and discussed better ways to guide the rainwater. Tom gave suggestions on where to build small water channels, how to plant more trees, and how to create small ponds in open areas to store rain safely. After the meeting, Mr. Allen came up to him again. "You've become the town's water expert now," he said with a smile. "It's funny how things change. A few months ago, everyone was against your dam, and now they all want to build ponds like yours. Tom laughed softly. Life has its ways of teaching, he said. Sometimes we need to see the problem before we can understand the solution. As the days passed, the neighborhood began working together. People started small garden projects, planted new trees, and built simple rain-collecting systems behind their homes. Even the HOA members joined in. They were kinder now, more open to listening to new ideas. One Saturday, a group of children came to Tom's house with their parents. They asked if they could help him rebuild the pond. Tom smiled and agreed, but he wanted it to be different this time. Instead of one big pond, he decided to create a series of small pools connected by stone paths. This would let water move gently through his land, keeping it safe and beautiful. Together, they worked for days. Tom guided them as they placed rocks and planted grass around the edges. The children laughed as they played with the water, and their parents enjoyed helping. It was no longer just Tom's project, it became a community effort. When the ponds were finally finished, everyone stood around and admired their work. The water sparkled under the sun, reflecting the blue sky. Butterflies flew above the flowers, and small fish swam happily in the clear water. The place looked like a small paradise. Lily came by with homemade lemonade for everyone. She smiled and said, "It looks even better than before, Tom. You turned something that once caused trouble into something that brings people together." Tom nodded with a gentle smile. That was always the goal, he said, to create something peaceful and useful for everyone. As evening approached, the group sat near the new ponds, talking and laughing. The soft breeze carried the scent of flowers, and the sound of water made everything feel calm. Tom looked around at the happy faces and felt proud, not because he had proved anyone wrong, but because people now understood the value of working with nature and helping one another. Later that night, as the stars began to appear, Tom sat quietly on his porch. The small ponds glimmered in the moonlight. He could hear frogs croaking softly and the steady hum of crickets in the distance. He closed his eyes and smiled. He thought about how far everything had come. The fine, the flood, the misunderstanding. All of it had led to this moment of peace and understanding. The town was stronger, the people were wiser, and the land was alive again. Tom realized that sometimes problems are not the end of something good. They are simply the beginning of something better. The dam he once built had caused conflict, but its purpose had never been lost. It had just needed time for others to see it. He looked at the glowing water one last time before heading inside. He whispered to himself, "It's not about holding the water back. It's about letting it find its way." And with that peaceful thought, Tom smiled and turned off the porch light, letting the calm night embrace his home. Weeks passed peacefully, and Tom's land looked more beautiful than ever. The small ponds he built with the neighbors now sparkled under the morning sun. Birds came every day to drink water, and butterflies danced around the bright flowers. The sound of gentle flowing water made the place feel alive. Everyone in the neighborhood began calling it the Green Corner. Tom enjoyed seeing people come by with their children to visit. Sometimes, they would bring breadcrumbs for the ducks or sit quietly near the edge enjoying the cool breeze. It made Tom happy to see smiles where there had once been complaints and arguments. The same people who once sent him warning letters now came to thank him for bringing peace to their area. One afternoon, as Tom was cleaning the pond edges, Mr. Allen and Mrs. Green arrived with a few HOA members. They carried folders and a small metal plate. "Tom," Mr. Allen said with a warm smile, "we have something for you." Tom wiped his hands and looked at them curiously. "What's all this?" he asked. Mr. Allen held up the metal plate. It had shiny letters engraved on it. "This is a community appreciation plaque," he said proudly. It says, "For making peace with nature and teaching us the value of balance," presented to Tom from the Hillview neighborhood. Tom looked at it silently for a moment, then smiled. "That's very kind of you," he said softly. "I didn't do it for an award. I just wanted to make the place better." "We know," said Mrs. Green. "But it's because of you that we learned how to take care of our land. You deserve this." They placed the plaque near one of the ponds, under a small tree. Everyone clapped and a few children ran around cheering. It was a simple moment, but it carried great meaning. For the first time, the HOA and the residents stood together, united not by rules but by respect. Later that day, after everyone left, Tom sat by the pond and looked at the plaque shining in the evening light. He thought about how everything had changed. The anger, the fine, the flood, and now this peace. It felt like a circle that had finally completed itself. That evening, Lily came over carrying a basket of freshly baked bread. She placed it on the small table beside Tom and sat down. "You've done something wonderful here," she said. "It's rare to see people come together like this." Tom smiled and nodded. "It wasn't just me," he said. "Everyone helped. I just gave them a reason to look at things differently." They both sat quietly for a while, watching the water ripple as the wind passed. "You know," Lily said after a pause, "this reminds me of something my father used to say. He said peace is like water. It always finds its level if you let it flow freely." Tom looked at her and smiled. "Your father was a wise man," he said. The days after that were calm and joyful. The HOA held a small fair near the ponds where families set up stalls with handmade crafts and homemade food. Children painted pictures of birds and fish, and laughter filled the air. Tom helped arrange tables and guided visitors to see how the new water system worked. Everyone called it Nature Day, and it became an annual event. During the fair, a local news reporter came to cover the story. She interviewed Tom, asking about his journey. He spoke simply, without pride. "I just followed what felt right," he said. "Sometimes nature gives us small lessons, and if we listen, life becomes easier." The next week, the article was published in the town newspaper with a picture of Tom standing beside the pond. The headline read, "From Find to Friendship, How One Man Taught a Town the Value of Nature." When Tom saw it, he smiled quietly and folded the paper to keep as a memory. One evening, after everyone had gone home, Tom walked along the path beside the ponds. The sky was painted orange and pink, and the reflection on the water made it look like a painting. He stopped for a moment and listened to the soft sound of frogs and crickets. Everything around him was calm and full of life. He thought about the storm, the fine, the long nights of worry, and how all those moments had led to this peaceful time. He felt thankful, not only for the beauty around him, but for the people who had changed with him. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Tom whispered softly, "Sometimes we lose things to gain something greater." He looked at the ponds one last time before heading back to his house, feeling light and content. That night he sat on his porch with a cup of tea. The breeze was gentle, and the sound of the flowing water reached him like a quiet song. For Tom, this was peace, simple, natural, and earned through patience. He didn't need any more words, any more recognition, or any more approval. The land itself spoke for him now. The water flowed smoothly, the air was clear, and the people were united. And in that quiet night, Tom smiled to himself, knowing that the story that began with conflict had finally found harmony. Months passed, and the Hillview neighborhood continued to flourish. The ponds were full of life, surrounded by green grass and tall trees. The once dry and dull land had become a peaceful place where people came to relax, talk, and enjoy the fresh air. Children played by the water, families came for picnics, and even visitors from nearby towns came to see what everyone called the miracle of Hillview. Tom had become a quiet local hero. People often waved to him when he walked by, and some stopped to thank him personally. But Tom never took any credit. He always said, "It wasn't just me. Nature was waiting for us to listen." His simple words touched everyone's heart. One morning, Tom received a letter from the city council. It was an invitation to attend a community event at the town hall. The letter said that his efforts to protect nature and bring unity to the neighborhood had inspired others. They wanted to honor him with a Community Harmony Award. When he read it, Tom smiled softly. He didn't care much about awards, but he appreciated the thought. Lily encouraged him to go, saying, "You've earned it. People need to hear your story so they can learn too." On the day of the event, Tom dressed neatly in a light blue shirt and simple trousers. The hall was filled with people from different neighborhoods, community leaders, and reporters. When his name was called, he walked to the stage slowly, his hands calm, his eyes kind. The mayor handed him a wooden plaque and said, "Tom has shown us that one person's love for nature can change an entire community." His patience and kindness turned a conflict into cooperation. Tom took the microphone and spoke in his gentle voice. "I never planned to teach anyone," he said. "I just wanted to take care of my land. But I learned something important. When we take care of nature, it takes care of us too. The water, the trees, and even the air, and they all want to live in peace with us. We just need to let them. The audience clapped warmly. Some people even stood up, showing their respect. It wasn't a grand speech, but it came from the heart. After the event, Tom returned home. The sky was cloudy and light rain began to fall. He walked to the ponds and stood there quietly, watching the drops ripple across the surface. The gentle rain made everything shine softly. It was the same rain that once caused so much trouble, but now it felt peaceful and kind. He smiled to himself and said, "This is how it should be, balanced and calm." Later that week, the HOA decided to create a small community center near the ponds. They called it the Hillview Nature Hall. Inside, they displayed pictures of the ponds before and after the changes, along with quotes from Tom's speeches and letters. There was also a section that explained how water flow worked, teaching children about the importance of respecting natural balance. Tom often visited the hall to help school children understand how the dam, ponds, and plants work together. He would kneel beside them and show them small details, like how a single rock could guide water in a new direction, or how one plant could clean the soil. The children loved listening to him because he spoke simply and kindly. One afternoon, Lily joined him at the hall. She watched as Tom explained something to a group of kids. When the children left, she smiled and said, "You've become a teacher, Tom." He laughed softly. "Maybe," he said, "but I think I'm still a student too. Nature keeps teaching me every day." As the sun began to set, they walked together along the water's edge. The golden light reflected on the pond, and the air was filled with the songs of birds returning home. Everything felt peaceful and complete. Tom looked around and said quietly, "Do you remember how it all started? Just a small dam and a dream to help the land." Lily nodded. "Yes, and now it's more than just land. It's a story of how patience can build bridges where walls once stood." Tom smiled. "Maybe that's what life is all about," he said. "Building small bridges one at a time." As night fell, the lights around the ponds began to glow. Families walked home laughing, and the sound of gentle water filled the air. Tom stood there for a while, feeling the cool breeze and the peace he had helped create. The plaque from the city, the award, the praise. None of it mattered as much as this moment. The land was alive, the people were happy, and balance had returned. Before heading back home, Tom looked at the calm water one last time and whispered, "Thank you." The water shimmered softly under the moonlight as if answering him, and in that quiet night, surrounded by nature's calm voice, Tom knew that everything was finally right, not because he fought for it, but because he learned to let it flow. It was not the story of a man against rules or a community divided by mistakes. It was the story of harmony, of learning, forgiving, and finding peace where no one expected it.